Good morning, folks. How are you doing? I am Scott. Bo is taking a nap. He's not snoring yet. And today is June the 7th, 2022. It is a nice day down here in Tampa, Florida at exactly 6:54 a.m. 73 degrees out there. It's a clear day in Tampa. Looks to be a nice, pretty day. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to give the Ukraine thing a break, but it might come up. We're going to give the Rona thing a break, and we're going to talk about Peter Navarro. Now, most of you know, I'm not Republican, I'm not Democrat. I was a lifelong Democrat until I watched Al Gore ring down the gavel and stop members of the Black Caucus from attempting to get one senior senator to sign their petition to stop the ascension of Dick Cheney to the White House. Let's face it, he was the one in charge. Technically, it was George Bush, but Dick Cheney, because they had a plan. And Al Gore stopped that. Stopped the questioning of that election. As a lifelong Democrat, seeing that happen, I understood that this is a one-party system, and they're all in on it. You have squabbles here and there, you have problems here and there on the fringes, but for the most part, they understand when there's a plan, there's a plan. You just suck it up, shut your mouth, thank your stars, your lucky stars that you got what you got, and move on. Al Gore, by the way, is a multi-millionaire now. For doing what? Good question. So I'm not pro-Trump. I'm not pro-Hillary. Certainly not pro-Biden. But what we witnessed this past week with the whole congressional subpoena thing on Peter Navarro and others surrounding what they knew about the president and his efforts to overturn the election results, called treasonous by various people in the media and political figures and law enforcement figures recently. What we're seeing here is something that you would expect to see. Now, people say third world countries. I won't go that far. But what you're seeing here is something that we've seen recently in a place called, Ukraine. Where they came to power, the Zelensky regime came to power, and knowing full well what they were going to do in the future, they started rounding up and arresting political opposition. Political opposition and people in the media who weren't towing the party line or the official narrative from the government. This is not questionable. This is what they did in the lead up to bombing fucking the Donbass region in order to bait the Russians in back in February of 2022. We've seen this take place in other countries, and places in other countries that we support. For example, I'll give you another example. When el-Sisi was installed by the Obama administration to replace the first elected president of Egypt, el-Sisi being a dictator, they went around and rounded up members of the Muslim Brotherhood, which was a political organization and a strong political organization, and would certainly have, in the next election, ousted al-Sisi. So they made that political organization illegal. Let's just call it for what it is. Let's say there's a coup, and Hillary Clinton had come back in 2017 and said it was illegitimate, but she said in 2019, the presidency, and many times, it's illegitimate. He's not my president, which harkens back to the good old days with Obama, of course. But let's imagine that Hillary Clinton comes into power or by a coup in 2017, and they decide to make the Republican Party illegal and round up members of the Republican Party and arrest them. That's what happened to with al-Sisi when they got rid of the first elected president in Egypt's history. And of course, we supported that. Just as a side note, Jackson Hinkle just did an interview with a guy who pretended and wrote under the name of Tony Cartalucci for a long time. He wasn't the original Tony Cartalucci. Tony Cartalucci in 2013 gave up the site, handed it over to Eric Dreitzer and somebody else. But the people wanted Cartalucci back, and all of a sudden this new incarnation of Tony Cartalucci came along, and that was this Brian guy. He interviewed him, give him a big plug and give him a bunch of attention, and bring him into that new network of Max Blumenthal fucking fake alt-left news. He was all in. He and I debated that. He was all in on comment section kind of thing. But he was all in on supporting al-Sisi. And when a general comes in and overthrows an elected government and takes over and becomes a dictator and a junta, he also supported that in Thailand when they got rid of Thaksin. The elected leader of that country. That's the kind of thing that the Blumenthal network will support. People who are all in on the brutal juntas and military dictators because they're so democratic. I digress. That's how the fake left. Listen, if you come here to listen hear about what the Democratic Party is doing to Peter Navarro, so I'm with you, and you think I've gone off on a tangent. I really haven't, because they've become fascist, even more fascist than the Republicans were back during the Bush and Cheney days. They've become fascist. Not only have they become fascist in the mainstream of the Democratic Party, they are doing their very level best to bleed that fascism into the alt-left communities. That's where I am. Hi, folks. I am way left Bernie Sanders. I know that Antifa is they're glowy fucking feds, and they are in fact fascists. I understand that. I understand that what Black Lives Matter became. I understand that. I'm not one of those guys. But I will tell you, I'm on the real left, the kind of left that actually supports freedom of speech, freedom of the press, your Second Amendment rights, your Fourth Amendment rights, that kind of left, that old-fashioned left. There's a couple of us. We're hidden around here, there. We're under a rock. Every now and then you dig down in the stream someplace. You're looking for a fucking crawdad for supper because there's nothing else to eat anymore. Thanks to what's going on. There's nothing else to eat. So you're looking for a crawdad. You might want to cross one of us. Pop up. Wait! Leave me alone. Here we are. Let's talk about this thing with Navarro. Let's see what I've dug up on this shit. You might like it. Now, before we get into this guy's thing, because he's going to talk about Eric Holder. Eric Holder was held. Here's the deal with Navarro. Apparently, they wanted him to testify before the Insurrection of 1-6 committee which is absolutely ridiculous. And they wanted him to testify because they want to use that testimony against Donald Trump. Here's the way that shapes out. And I gotta try to make sense of this for you. Just their ask, their demand, so that you can understand what it is that he was rejecting. Peter Navarro had nothing to do with the insurrection of 1-6, which wasn't an insurrection. I called it the fucking Velvet Rope Revolution. I literally... Shit, hang on a second. While it was happening and it was being broadcast live, as if they knew something other than a fucking rally was going to happen. CNN, and I covered this, CNN was the people on CNN were breathlessly screeching, oh my God, it's an insurrection. They're attacking while they're saying this, they're showing these people quietly, calmly, slowly walking through the Hall of Statues. And every single one of them's like this with their cell phone. So I called it the Velvet Rope Revolution, which meant they were just walking calmly. Men, women, children. Ooh, look at that. Ooh. And the people in CNN were acting as if they were beheading motherfuckers. And the moment I saw that, this is while it was happening, before all the rest, before the woman was shot and the whole fucking thing, I said, they're going to make something bigger out of this. That's why they're bloviating and hyperventilating. That's why they're putting all the hype into this live discussion. Because they're going to make something bigger out of this than it actually is. Because there was absolutely no reason for them to act and be talking and be reacting the way they were based on the pictures that they were showing. It was nothing. Okay? So just so you know where I stand on that. But that's where that was. Now, so they wanted him to testify, but they don't want him to testify. They want to get him before Congress so they can demand that he turn over communications. He has to turn over communications. Now, this is an interesting thing, and this is why I've queued up Tucker's thing here. They want him to turn over communications between him and the president. Well, Eric Holder, as Tucker points out correctly, claimed executive privilege when he was asked to testify before Congress. They never arrested him. They never fucking ran to the fucking... they never ran to the grand jury to get an indictment. You can indict a ham sandwich, by the way. And conversely, you cannot indict a ham sandwich if that is what the prosecution wants. I'll give you an example. Recently, this dude, who because he was a star athlete of the sports ball team, the local sports ball team, was brought before a grand jury by a prosecutor who really wanted to give him a pass. Because big business, the team that owned the sports ball, the company that owned the billionaire who owned that local sports ball team, wanted him to be able to play. So, the prosecutor gave them their day in court, brought 20 women who had been, at that time, now it's 24 women, brought them to the grand jury to give them a chance to testify before the grand jury to see if the grand jury would indict. A grand jury will indict on anything if the prosecutor wants it. Now, if the prosecutor doesn't want it, what the prosecutor can do while they're outside, before they're all gathered together, ready to come in, some in tears, some upset, some worried, some scared, to come in and testify before a grand jury one by one. Before they come in, here's all the prosecutors got to do. Okay. These gold diggers, women, are going to be here in a second, and they're going to fucking give you their stories about how they want to take this African-American hero's money. And so, of course, they come in, they tell what happened, and, of course, there's no indictment. And so there you go. Clean bill of health. Let him play ball. Let the sports ball hero bring in money and fame and take us all the way to the Super Bowl. Woohoo! That's how they can manipulate the system for big business. Well, they can also manipulate the system for political gain, and that's what they did with this individual. Of course, he has executive privilege because his communications were involved with the President of the United States, the seated President of the United States. And of course, the Justice Department, as Tucker rightly points out, has a policy on that.
So a week ago, Peter Navarro made this exact point. He sued the Justice Department, pushing back against this subpoena 4 days before he was arrested. And in that suit, Navarro cited policy written by the DOJ's Office of Legal Counsel. That policy reads this way, quote, "Since the 1970s, this office has consistently advised that the president and his immediate advisors are absolutely immune from testimonial compulsion by Congressional Committee on matters related to their official duties." End quote. In other words, if somebody asserts executive privilege, at the very least, Congress doesn't get to arrest them.
Okay. Now, he's going to go on to make it clear that, in his mind, this is a political thing. I don't think it is. Eric Holder is a prime example. Eric Holder, yes, he was a Dem, but his go fuck yourself card, meaning it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you do. You have certain levels of go fuck yourself cards. Go screw yourself card, get the fuck out of here card, and then the go fuck yourself card. I happen to know personally a doctor who admitted to the go screw yourself card, being that being a privilege given to people in his profession. The go fuck yourself card is different, and his dates back all the way to Waco. If you don't understand that, look it up. But his dates back all the way to fucking Waco. Eric Holder has been somebody who has been really untouchable because he's been part of a bigger fucking program. Not just part of the government, not part of the fucking Democratic Party, but part of a bigger program. Like Hillary Clinton. She has the go fuck yourself 2 times over card. She's way up there. She's got the go fuck yourself or I'll suicide your ass card. That's what card she has. Because she's gotten away with all kinds of shit, and they let her run for president. And they thought she was going to break the fucking glass ceiling. She would be president. You know who else has the go fuck yourself card? Gina Haspel. I'll explain that one to you later. So it's not about just Democrats versus Republicans, which of course is just a very oversimplified version of it, which is, of course, Tucker Carlson talking down to his audience. He doesn't want to explain to you how long he's been in that fucking go fuck yourself card classification, dating all the way back to, I don't know, a time when Americans or the American government killed more fucking children than that dude in Uvalde. Anyway, let's take a look at something, shall we? So he's right on that. That is the Justice Department's position, and they do that because they protect the office of the president, because they know the president is going to do some fucked up shit. So typically, that's what they'll do. But is he right about who? He's right to mention fucking Eric Holder. They didn't fucking ham sandwich his ass in front of the grand jury and then arrest him. But is it just because he's a Democrat? Fuck no. We have a lot of them. Harriet Mier, Janet Reno, David Watkins, Lois Lerner. Of course, here's the Eric Holder one, Joshua Bolton, Brian Pagliano, William Barr, William Wilbur Ross, Chad Wolf, and of course Stephen Bannon. We have a number of them who have been found in contempt of court with varying degrees of results. You know, Janet Reno was eventually forced to come forward. She wasn't arrested. She was eventually, none of these were arrested after commit contempt of court, contempt of Congress. She eventually had to turn over some documents. Did she turn over the documents they wanted? No. Was she arrested? No. Would you like another one? I'll give you another one. Just in case you think it's just the Democrats getting away with this shit. How about, and Eric Holder's crime under the Obama administration is much worse than what they accuse Peter Navarro of doing. Basically, under the RICO Act, of being involved with some people who they think planned the insurrection of 1/6, which wasn't an insurrection. That's all. They don't say that he actually planned it. They just said that he was in collusion with them in a conspiracy involving something else, but during that time that they were involved in a conspiracy with doing something else, if anybody in that conspiracy commits any other crime, like planning the insurrection of 1/6, then Peter Navarro is also guilty of that. Through osmosis, I assume. That is legitimately what they're fucking saying. Don't take my word for it. That's the thing from Glenn Kirshner. By the way, in case you didn't know, Glenn Kirshner is a disciple of a guy by the name of Robert Mueller. After a few early rotational assignments, Kirshner joined the U.S. Attorney's Office, homicide section led at the time by Robert Mueller, and he spent 24 years there. Here he is. An acolyte of Robert Mueller. Does his name ring any bells for you? Isn't he the guy who gave Hillary Clinton a pass? I believe he is. He says it's treasonous that Peter Navarro filed a lawsuit to stop this whole thing, having to testify, using, as Tucker pointed out, the Department of Justice's own fucking standards and guidelines. But he claims, and here's what he claims. I'm not making this up. I swear I'm not making this up. I don't make shit up. This is Kirshner, the Robert Mueller acolyte, and this is him talking about the crime committed by this individual here. Well, that's Glenn Kirshner. The crime committed by Peter Navarro. That's Peter Navarro. He says, quote, "Once we had that finding by Judge David Carter out in California, then, by a preponderance of evidence, Trump and John Eastman committed 2 federal felonies. One, a conspiracy to commit offenses against or defraud the United States, and the second, to obstruct official proceedings. The certification of Biden's win. I believe, as a guy who prosecuted conspiracy cases and RICO cases, that the law of conspiracy kicks in. And specifically, the law of conspiracy says that any member of the conspiracy who is a member, if you're a member of a conspiracy, you are responsible. You are criminally liable for every crime, every crime of every other member of the conspiracy if it's made during the course and of the furtherance of the conspiracy," he added. Meaning, he was involved in something else with the Bush administration. He doesn't try to say he was involved in the planning of the insurrection of 1/6. But he does say that because they were involved in something else and somebody else who was involved with that, it's like doing 6 degrees of separation. 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon game. Because he can be connected to that dude, and that dude then did this, he's guilty of that because of his association with this dude, even though he even knows he didn't do anything in furtherance of the insurrection of 1/6. Does that make sense? That's how fucking hard they are working. And they took that bullshit to the grand jury, and because, like I said, you can get a fucking indictment on a ham sandwich if the prosecution wants to, they indicted him and they arrested him the next day. This is something that is unprecedented. Unprecedented. I showed you the list. That was a full list of people who have been held in contempt of Congress. Okay? Just so we know what the supposed crime is. Well, let's and I'll go to the history again in a second, but let's dive deeper into the crime. Now, we all know the insurrection of 1/6, as I've told you, was the Velvet Rope Revolution. There wasn't an insurrection. Was there an effort to get them to stop the official acceptance of the fucking Electoral College votes and prevent Joe Biden from being president? Yes. Did they fucking take that to be an insurrection? Was that an insurrection? No. But did they think that there was election fraud? Not voter fraud, big difference. Election fraud. Yes. Do I believe there was? Yes. There's always going to be election fraud in our system until we get rid of electronic voting machines. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Black box voting. Magic. Trust the system. No. Yes. There was fraud committed. They were mostly out there protesting, and then, of course, feds brought them in. People at the Capitol let them in, and then CNN acted like it was they were beheading people and screaming as tourists basically were walking through the fucking Capitol because they had come from Iowa. And they were never going to see it again in life, and with their cell phones taking pictures and videos. But did they feel like there was fraud? Yes. Did Donald Trump feel like there was fraud? Yes. Did he want a recount? Did he want to fucking stop the fucking proceeding from happening? Yes. Who else did that? Oh, I don't know. Hillary Clinton? It wasn't that long ago, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. I remember when fucking the sane progressive was jumping on board and helping fucking finance a recall, a revote of the votes in fucking some of these the blue wall states. I covered that shit when it was happening. I also noticed they weren't going into the districts where Hillary Clinton somehow got 60 billion fucking votes when the rest of the fucking state went red. They didn't want to recount those votes. They just wanted to recount all the red district votes. That was crooked as shit as well. Their efforts to do that. And like I said, up until 2019, she was declaring, late 2019, Hillary Clinton was declaring that Donald Trump was the illegitimate president of the United States of America. But here, there's no question. They did everything they could. Hillary Clinton did everything they could to overturn the election of 2016. The will of the people. They went so far as to do this, quote, "Unfortunately, no one is going to ever examine that evidence unless candidates in those states act now in the next several days to petition for recounts." That was what Haldeman was talking about. The developments follow Clinton's surprise defeat to Donald Trump in the 8 November vote and come after U.S. intelligence authorities who released public assessments that Russian hackers were behind intrusions into the regional electoral computer systems and the theft of the emails from the Democratic officials before the election. Oh, Russiagate. Russia. It was Russia. Hate on Russia. We got to find someone to blame this boat. Let's blame Putin. Putin stole the presidency from Hillary Clinton. Remember that, folks? She was trying to have states not declare their electoral college votes. Remember, she actually even had a campaign. Does this sound familiar? She had a campaign trying to get the state's attorney, whoever it is who's in charge of that, I think it's the state's attorney, to go ahead and on their own declare the fucking electoral college votes for Hillary Clinton, in spite of the fact that the people voted for Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton did that shit. She was as guilty as Donald Trump in trying to overturn the election and the will of the American people. And that wasn't 20 years ago. It's 2016. It was a previous fucking president. And everyone acts as if, oh my God, Donald Trump trying to look into the possibility of changing votes or counting ballots in different states. It's treason. Wasn't treason when Hillary Clinton did it, was it? What might have been treason was Barack Obama using the fucking Five Eyes program and GCHQ and fucking the feds, our feds and our intelligence agencies to spy on an opposition candidate's fucking election process, campaign, during an election. You can call that treason, if you like. I would. That's the kind of shit you get in places like, oh, I don't know, Ukraine, for example. That's one. There's more. How long did it take Bush v. Gore to be settled in 2000? December 12, 2000, the Supreme Court ended a Florida vote recount and presidential election contest between George W. Bush and Al Gore. The court's decision remains debated today. Yeah, it should be. On November 8, 2000, a preliminary vote tally in Florida showed Bush leading Gore by about 1,700 votes in the state, which is 25 electoral votes up for grabs, and that's the winner in the Florida that becomes the next president of the United States. The initial vote tally was so close in Florida, with less than 0.5% difference. Florida state laws triggered an automatic machine recount. The first recount left Bush with just 317 vote margin over Gore. Gore asked for a manual recount in 4 counties, as allowed under Florida's law. Over the next weeks, Democrats and state officials fought over the deadline related to the recount and the need for the deadline extension. On November 26, 2000, Florida Secretary of State Kathleen Harris was eventually, she gave big time, she ran the Bush campaign in Florida. In case you guys didn't know that. And she was in charge of the election in Florida. had certified that Bush had won the election by a 537 vote margin. Gore then sued Harris because all the recounts had not been completed when she certified the results. He sued her. What does that sound like? On December 8th, the Florida Supreme Court sided with Gore, ordering that statewide undervote ballots, or punch card ballots that had been cast but not registered because of a problem with hanging chads, needed to be recounted. Bush immediately appealed to the Supreme Court, which ordered the recount halted the very next day. They had a plan. Then, of course, what did Al Gore do? He did exactly what he was supposed to do. But the question is, this shit was going on into fucking December. And it took an act by the Supreme Court to stop them from counting the votes and realizing Dick Cheney wasn't going to be the next fucking leader of the free world. Because they wrote in 1999, they wrote the thing called Project for a New American Century, wrote a plan called Rebuilding America's Defenses. They had a plan, boys and girls. They had a plan in place, and they were going to see it through, but they had to be in the White House to do it. Gore learned his lesson, shut his mouth, rang down the gavel, stopped the recount of those 56,000 African Americans in Florida who were wrongly deprived of their vote, which would have overturned the election, legitimately overturned the election. And 9/11 never would have happened. But Al Gore rang down the fucking gavel. One congressperson after another from the Black Caucus, shutting them up. And then he cashed in. Because that's how it works. Would you like to know somebody else? Now that's just to show you. And that's just the last elections. That's just to show you that what they're trying to charge him with and calling it fucking treason is ridiculous. As if it hasn't been done before. Talking about Donald Trump. Now, in terms of contempt of Congress, I'll give you another prime example. Just so you know it's not one party. Now, there was a crime. Now, it was a big crime. Fast and Furious. Eric Holder. They cite the one fucking U.S. Border Patrol agent who was killed by a gun from Fast and Furious. But we're talking about using a whole bunch of fucking guns that were collected and then illegally given to one of the cartels in Mexico so that cartel could take over. And since they would take over and basically bring in all the fucking drugs, and we would have control of that cartel, we would have control of all their drug distribution as well. And how many people has that killed? Yeah, we're talking about one guy, but let's look at the bigger picture of just how criminal that was. Which is why, of course, they didn't want Eric Holder testifying. Well, that's a big crime. How about 9/11? How about 9/11? Back when 9/11 happened, here's all, you can read it yourself. Stop the video and read it. I don't need to read it because I know it. They wanted Kissinger to come in. Kissinger was obviously rejected by the fucking family members because he's a fucking criminal. He's corrupt as shit. They brought in Zelensky and Lee and Hamilton and fucking Keene. They brought in, not Zelensky, Zelikow. They brought in Philip Zelikow. He already had an outline of the end results of the 9/11 Commission. The day they brought him in, he had an outline under his he brought it in his briefcase. That's a fact. He was one who determined, as the fucking CEO of the fucking commission, who was interrogated, what kinds of questions were asked, and who wasn't. And what they were looking at and what they weren't looking at. You know what his job was prior to that? He was in the Bush transition team. He's an acolyte of Condi Rice, who, by the way, they really didn't want Condi Rice talking to the 9/11 Commission report because Condi Rice's fucking Vulcans planned it. With George Shultz and Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld and a whole bunch of them. That's why they didn't want that, boys and girls. But here's the interesting thing. They were told they had to fucking, the 9/11 Commission wanted to fucking talk to Dick Cheney and George W. Bush, Vice President and President of the United States when this whole thing happened. And there were lots of quote-unquote failures. Failures in intelligence, failures to defend the skies from fucking hijacked planes. All sorts of failures. So, of course, the people who were in charge at the time should be asked about these failures. They refused. They refused. Eventually, they had to, because of pressure from the 9/11 families, they had to give in. But here were the stipulations. They won't testify separately. You're not going to get a chance to talk to fucking George W. Bush. You're not going to put Bush in front of the House Intelligence Committee to interrogate him, the 9/11 Committee to interrogate him. Those are smart people on the 9/11 Committee. You're not going to let that happen. So Dick Cheney had to testify with George W. Bush. Nothing was recorded. Nothing. I don't even think they could take notes. And they weren't under oath. Which means they could lie and not be held accountable for it. And they testified, quote unquote, under those stipulations. Now that's a big crime, boys and girls. That's treason if there's some kind of collusion involved. If there's a RICO situation there, that's fucking treason. That's a crime. Let them go. Off you go. Off you go. It's okay. Dick Cheney couldn't allow George W. Bush to go in there and face his questions by himself. So he had to hold his hand. Oh, it's all about the Democrats. No, boys and girls, it is not. That's not the only one involved with 9/11. For those of you who don't know, there was another obstruction of fucking Congress that happened involving 9/11. And that came from the CIA themselves. You can read that there yourself. The reality here was they were a large part of the 9/11 Commission report's findings, their final conclusion, what they said about, here's the real story about 9/11, was based on testimony from two individuals garnered via torture. Abu Zabada is one of them, the other one I can't even pronounce his fucking name. They tortured him. They waterboarded other forms of torture, but they waterboarded the two of them, between them, 186 times before they finally got what they wanted. Remember back when they were debating whether waterboarding was actually torture, and people said, I'll be a waterboarder, it's not torture. And they say, okay. And they brought in somebody who actually does that shit for a living. They put the guy down on the fucking bench. They threw the fucking towel over his mouth. They started pouring the water on him. And the guy wets himself and sits up and starts crying and confessing and weeping and talking about pleasuring himself by looking at his sister when he was fucking 11. That kind of shit. No, it's not torture. Fuck you, it isn't torture. Fuck you, it isn't torture. If it's done right by people who know what they're doing, yeah, it's torture. And they did other things to him. It took 186 of those And we're not talking about, done. Took 186 of those to get them to confess. Now, for those confessions, what they wanted was, the 9/11 Commission wanted was, okay, let us come and talk to them. We got to talk to them because we got to make sure that what you've written here is what actually they said. No, fuck you. That's obstruction one. CIA. Okay, if you won't do that, let us come and sit and watch you talk to them and ask the questions that we want you to ask, and we want to be able to hear their responses live from them. Fuck you. That's obstruction 2. CIA. We're not talking about the insurrection of 1/6, which Al Gore did and Hillary Clinton did. We're not talking about bullshit. Can you count the votes again, please? We're not talking about we're talking about 9/11. Fuck you, says the CIA. This is, if you're a normie, this is where your fucking idea of what happened on 9/11 came from. This is it. Fuck you. Okay. How about this? Says a 9/11 Commission. Why don't you give us the videotapes of the interrogation? Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Obstruction 3, 4, 5, and 6. Eventually, they said, why don't you just give us a list, and we'll go off on our own of questions. And we'll go off on our own, and we'll bring you a typed response, not signed. What? Yeah. Give us a list of questions, and we'll take it to them, and we'll ask them, and then we'll type, not in their handwriting, not signed, we'll type out their fucking response and give that shit back to you. Okay? CIA. Really happened. Really happened. They get a subpoena to get the videotapes of the actual interrogations and the questioning. Do you know what the CIA did with them? They burned them. That's where the official story of 9/11 comes from. They burned them. That's 2 more counts of obstruction. The CIA. Fuck you. We're the CIA. We're beyond you. We're above you. We kill presidents. Go fuck yourself. Okay. Do you know what happened to the person who gave the order to burn those subpoenaed documents from Congress? Pure obstruction of Congress. Pure obstruction of Congress. You know what happened to that person? She was promoted. She was promoted. Her name was Gina Haspel. At the time, she was some underling someplace. Then she became, from 2018 to 2021, she became the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. She was the first woman to hold the post on a permanent basis, as most previously the deputy director under Mike Pompeo during the early days of Donald Trump's presidency. She was promoted. But yeah, right here, torture and destruction of evidence controversy, and there is the Abu Zabadiah. Destruction of the videos. Not only was she doing that, covering up that, and giving the order to destroy the fucking videos in that case, but also cases of torture and illegal fucking activity by the CIA in black sites all across the world at that time. That time when Dick Cheney, the unitary executive, told an NBC News anchor, we're going to have to take a walk on the dark side for a little while. Dude was already there. Peter Navarro. What is he guilty of? He's guilty of being in collusion with somebody, dealing with something else, and that somebody then did something else. And so they say, well, since he did that, and then he did that, he's guilty of that, which is, to me, ridiculous. They use that shit to try to bullshit their way 6 degrees of separation, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon mob bosses. Not political figures, but that's what they want. They want the communication between him and Trump to find something on Trump they can use to keep him from running for election in 2024. That's ultimately what they want. This is the same kind of shit happening, and it's in your face. Yesterday's video was all about the shit that's in your face, and we're a tin pot fucking dictatorship now. As long as we allow this shit to happen, we're a tin pot fucking dictatorship now. What is Peter Navarro actually guilty of? I don't know. What he did with Trump, I don't give a shit. Trump is gone. That's the end of it. That's usually how that shit works. If I had to say anything that I know about Peter Navarro that I'm not a big fan of, I'd say it's this. They said he's kind of had a bizarre thing Saturday, where he made this statement. But then you have to look at where he was when he made the statement. Peter Navarro, former advisor to Donald Trump facing contempt of Congress charges, ranted about the United States government in a court hearing in D.C. on Friday, alleging that Congress conspired with the Justice Department to deprive him of his rights. I am disappointed in our republic, Navarro told the judge. On Saturday, Navarro was in New York praising the new federal state of China, a supposed government in waiting for Beijing, launched in 2020 by Guai Wengguai, whatever the fuck, Go Wengguai, whatever his name is. Also known as Miles Guo, whatever his name is. He's an exiled Chinese businessman. And Steve Bannon, another former Trump aide. Navarro last year became an international ambassador for the group. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, he might as well be calling himself Juan Guaido. Peter Navarro is Juan Guaido of China. I'm a national ambassador for this made-up government of China that we've all got ready to go and collecting money, headed up by a businessman. Business! And we're ready to go as soon as we can regime change China. And that's what Peter Navarro is today. And they're collecting money, and they got money coming in from other NGOs owned by Miles Guo, whatever his fucking name is, the businessman in exile. Last year, they did this thing where Miles Guo, I guess he's the Juan Guaido of China. He says he's pledged to be president dictator of the new republic, or the whatever the fuck it is, of China. They're made up fucking government of China. Steve Bannon was there. Navarro was there last year when they launched this thing on a fucking 36-foot, $26 million fucking yacht. A yacht with the Statue of Liberty in the background and a bunch of cameramen to film it. And the guy signed the pledge, I will do everything I can to bring neoliberal Milton Friedman economics to China, 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 China. He signed it in his own blood. You think this shit, this neoliberal free market shit isn't a fucking cult, boys and girls? That's what Peter Navarro is up to nowadays. Working with Steve Bannon, ripping off a bunch of people, bitching about China, 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 China all day long, and raking in money, 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 money. That's what he's into nowadays. That's as bad as it is. Listen, there have been Moonies putting crowns on people in fucking congressional halls. We've got the MEK holding ceremonies. Hillary Clinton's going to the MEK fucking rallies every goddamn year, along with all kinds of other Congress critters to get fucking money to give speeches. Terrorist organizations, crack cults like the Moonies, and of course now we got this thing with Steve Bannon and with Peter Navarro and Miles Guaido. You want to call him? Let's call him Miles Guaido. How about that? There have been Washington, like a flame, moths to flames. It just draws them in. It just draws them in. And if they are a big enough cult, and they have enough money, they're just drawn to that power. That's why the Moonies were there. That's why the fucking who's the guy? The Gulenists from Turkey. They always want to be in power in their country, and they know that Washington is corrupt, and they want to get somebody out of power in that country, so they want to be in favor when they get that fucking regime change going. They want to be established and ready to go. So you got Miles Guaido in fucking China getting ready for that, and his advisor Steve Bannon to be vice dictator or grand poobah when that happens. It's all bullshit. But that's the thinking in Washington. That's how fucked up that goddamn inside the Beltway is. And I mentioned 3. I'm sure there's 100. That's the only fucking thing Peter Navarro is guilty of. That kind of ridiculous bullshit scam, rainmaker kind of thing. And he's taking the money, and he's there, and he's having to go through the motions, but he's taking the fucking money. Now he's an ambassador to a country, a government that doesn't exist. That's what he's guilty of. Should he have been arrested? Of course not. Should he have been indicted like a ham sandwich? The ham sandwich sitting on the bench next to him? No, of course not. It's fucking ridiculous. It was against the Justice Department's own fucking precedent that they had written out, and it's against the fucking precedent they had set by not holding people in contempt who had actually done lots of crimes in the past. Doesn't matter, Democrat, Republican, it's all the same. They got the go fuck yourself card. I guess Peter Navarro doesn't have one. He should apply. It's not that hard. All you got to do is, I don't know, help cover up fucking the massacre of 23 kids to start with. That's one way to do it, apparently. Talk to you later.